I'm Charlie Bride of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Colin Heck, the supervising director of the Netflix animated series Mulligan, as part of our Meet the Experts TV animation panel. First question I wanted to ask you is: so this is a show that comes from Robert Carlock and Sam Means, who've done a lot of comedy television, especially with Tina Fey, 30 Rock, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, all sorts of things like that. But this is their first foray into animation. Was doing an animated series something that they had been eyeing for a while?
When I've asked them this question before, they've said that they I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but they've said that they were already kind of writing animation in their live action stuff, that their stuff is very will get zany at times, and the pacing is very fast, and they like that they like the rhythms that you can achieve in animation if you go fast enough. And so I think they were always looking at it, and they always liked animation. They've talked a lot about shows that they used to watch in the 30 Rock writers room. I remember Robert was saying that they used to watch Clarence in there, which was a surprise to me and a delight, because I have a lot of friends that work on that show. But this was their first experience doing it, and I had to do a lot of like, this seems really fun. I think this is going to be difficult, because when live action writers come into animation for the first time, the possibilities are endless. You can, the idea is you can do whatever you want, and that's true to an extent, but there's a lot of stuff you still can't do. It's still very difficult to have a lot of crowds or things like that. And so there was definitely an education process, but they picked it up really quickly. And the first time, they really enjoyed the level of control that they got on this, as opposed to live action. And on a live action set, you get what you get on that day, and you're dealing with a lot of personalities, and you point the camera and you hope that you get it, and you have a certain amount of time to get it. In animation, you have more time to mess with that stuff and to dial in the details that you want, including sound, including whatever. So like the first time we went into like a dialogue editing session, I was like, okay, I like the first half of take one and the second half of take three. Let's combine those and make one take that we like. They were like, looked at me like I was a wizard. And I was like, oh, you guys don't do that in live action. That's right. It's a lot harder there. But their concept of pace and the concept of the show that they wanted to make was pretty fully formed. Like, they knew what they wanted to do, and my job was largely carrying out that vision.
It's interesting that you bring that up about the pacing, of how they've always felt like they're writing for animation, because now that I think about it, shows like 30 Rock and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt do have that rhythm that like classic Simpsons episodes had. And with the cutaways also, it really feels like that's like coming full circle, especially for you, because you actually worked on The Simpsons.
It's true. And I didn't supervise The Simpsons, so it was a lot of like when I was working on The Simpsons, like watching the supervisors, and you're like, oh, that. And being on this show, remembering like, oh, my supervisors on The Simpsons conducted themselves this way. But on this show, like, The Simpsons is a much larger operation than this. So I had, as the supervising director, I had to do a lot, like sitting in the dialogue edits or being in the records and helping direct. I have said that one of the things that I loved the most was helping direct the giant stars that were on the show, like, pitching lines to Tina and having her, give me a courtesy laugh was a huge, like, you don't normally get to do that. But pace was the priority, I think. When we first sat down to do the show, to think about how the show would look, they're like, well, we want it to feel like our other shows. I was like, well, your other shows cut a lot, so I think we have to cut a lot here. Cut with a lot of cut very rapidly, rather. And you mentioned the cutaways. There's a lot of cutaways in here, and those can be tricky sometimes. But the the intention was to shoot this show like a single cam show that feels like their other comedies. And when you combine the cutting style and the shooting style with Jeff Ritzman's music and their jokes, then I think that helps tie it together and feel like their other shows.
You were talking about the cast of the show, and when I was looking, and when you look down the cast of the show, I think the name that stuck out the most for me, because it was such a pleasant surprise to see him doing something prominent again, was Dana Carvey.
Oh
as well as the senator. How did he come to be a part of the main cast?
I'm gonna guess because I don't know. I don't know the actual details, but Robert Carlock worked on the Dana Carvey show.
The show that had the alternating title every week of
yes.
the sponsor that was yes. sponsoring it.
Correct. And there's the documentary about, I think it's called Too Funny to Fail, and Robert's on that a fair amount. And so I think they just knew each other from that, and I can't remember. I don't think they overlapped at SNL, but I believe that Robert and Dana had a relationship from that, and I don't know how exactly he roped him into this, but Dana committed, and he was very game to do basically anything that we asked of him. In addition to doing Lamar, like the main character that he does a lot of other like incidental voices, or just like a guy that got his butt shot off in one scene or whatever. Like he was a pretty willing utility player through all this stuff.
You really can't ask for a better one, honestly.
It was really great. And I mean, my favorite thing, which wasn't beneficial to the show, but like in the records at a certain point, you do a lot and then you kind of get tired, and then he just would tell stories about, when he was a waiter in a hotel serving Rich Little stuff, or like Dana's stories about being in entertainment were great. And my favorite thing, and I kept getting yelled at, like, hey, we like stop him from telling all these stories. We have to finish the records, please.
Got to wrap by 5.
Exactly.
You mentioned the experience of getting to record some of getting to direct some of these people in the record. You mentioned Tina Fey. Who were some of the other ones that you really enjoyed their sessions with directing?
Everybody was great. It's hard to think of anybody that I didn't enjoy. One of the cool things that I got to do for the first time on this show was read against, like, this was all pandemic lockdown production. I never met most of the people that worked on the show in person. Some of them were in New York, some of them were here, some of them were in various places. So anytime we recorded, I was the one reading against them, and that was really fun, except when I had to like read against Holly Hunter because she was great, but it's intimidating reading against an Oscar winner. And I was like having to do a Southern accent in front of Holly Hunter, and it was like, I was giving it my all, but
who has a perpetual Southern accent.
Yeah. Daniel Radcliffe was great, and such a sweet guy and such a hard worker. Like his stuff, the stuff that he gave us was fantastic, and he was super friendly the entire time. Ted Danson was great. Andy Samberg was great. Weird Al was great. I got to see the inside of his closet. It was really nice. I mean, the main cast, like all of the main cast was fantastic. Chrissy Teigen, this is her first like largest role. Like I think she had done a little bit of voice acting in Mitchell's vs. the Machines, and this was an order of magnitude harder than that, because she was in every episode as one of the main characters, and she came to play. She was willing to do whatever we wanted and worked really hard on it, and I think she gave us some really good stuff. Nat Faxon is Maddie. He was also fantastic. I mean, Nat is great in everything, I think. Sam Richardson is so funny. I loved him in Detroiters, and
Detroiters, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had seen him in the few I Think You Should Leave sketches that he was in, and I loved having him there. He's kind of like the heart of the show in a lot of ways. He's one of the only like thinking characters. And he brought some genuine emotion to places, and he was really good at selling the jokes. I mean, I could do this for the rest of our time.
Well, one other thing I'm really curious about is how did the look for the show come about?
The look for the show was set before I got on, and so Robert and Sam had been working with an art director named Jonathan Finn Gamino, and they, like, when I got brought on to the show, they had a look that they were going for, which is largely the look that is on the screen. My priority, like, they liked it, Netflix liked it, everybody was like, this is the look we're going for. And at that point, my responsibility was simplifying it and streamlining it so it was easier to animate, because the original versions of these characters had a lot of lines on their faces and a lot of buttons and things. And I was like, guys, this is going to be hard to turn. And so, like, removing a lot of the lines on Lamar's face, for example, he was very wrinkly in the first iterations that I saw. But they, like, to be honest, a lot of that stuff got done before I got involved. So I was largely working with the style that they had set.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you join our panel in just a little bit.
Thanks, Charles. It was great to be here.